What if the foods sitting in the oldest book on the planet were also the most powerful snacks modern nutrition science has ever studied? What if 3,000 years before anyone had a lab coat or a microscope, people were already reaching for combinations of fruit and nuts and bread and honey that we're only now able to explain at the cellular level? Right now, somewhere in a break room in Ohio, somebody is tearing open a bag of something orange and dusty and calling it lunch. And they have no idea that the ancient world was already eating snacks that modern researchers are studying for their effects on inflammation, blood sugar, gut health, and cellular repair. These aren't Sunday school stories. These are functional foods with real biochemistry behind them. And today, I'm walking you through 20 of them, ranked from remarkable to absolutely game-changing. Stick with me, because number 12 is one of the most studied natural substances on Earth, and it's been hiding in plain sight in Scripture the entire time. And number 20 was a food ancient feasts ended on, for a reason that modern cardiologists actually respect. Let's get into it. 20 biblical snacks that could transform the way you think about food. Let's start. Number 1. Figs with honey, the oldest medicine cabinet in the world. We're starting here because this pairing is almost unfairly perfect. Figs show up again and again in Scripture as symbols of peace and abundance, but they weren't just symbolic. They were used as medicine. In the book of 2 Kings, when King Hezekiah is gravely ill, the prophet Isaiah doesn't just offer him a prayer. He has a poultice of figs pressed directly onto the affected area, and Hezekiah recovers. Modern research gives us a real reason why that might have worked. Figs contain natural enzymes that help break down damaged tissue, and they carry compounds that have shown antimicrobial activity in laboratory studies. Fresh fig sap has been researched for its ability to slow the growth of certain bacteria. Beyond that, figs are loaded with soluble fiber, specifically a type called pectin, which feeds the good bacteria living in your gut. They're rich in calcium, magnesium, potassium, and B vitamins, which puts them near the top of the list for mineral density among fruits you can eat with one hand while driving to the hill country of Tennessee or sitting on a porch in coastal Georgia. Now pair that fig with raw honey, not the bear-shaped bottle, sitting in your pantry that's been heated and filtered until it barely resembles what came out of a hive. Real raw honey, harvested straight from the comb, unheated and unfiltered. Research on raw honey has shown it can act against certain strains of bacteria, including some that resist antibiotics, through a few different mechanisms. It naturally produces small amounts of hydrogen peroxide. It has a low pH that many pathogens can't tolerate, and it contains natural proteins that appear to interfere with bacterial cell walls. Manuka honey, which comes from the same tradition of using honey medicinally, is now used in wound care products in hospitals. Together, a fig and a spoonful of raw honey isn't just something sweet. It's a mineral-dense, naturally protective combination that people were eating instinctively long before anyone understood why it worked. This is where the story of biblical snacks begins, because in many ways, it's where the whole diet began. Number 2, date stuffed with almonds, the original energy bar. If you were crossing the desert between what's now Jordan and Egypt 3,000 years ago, walking for days at a time, this is what you carried in your pack. Dates are mentioned more than almost any other fruit across ancient religious texts, and it's not because they're delicious, although they are. It's because they kept people alive. Dates are calorie-dense. They last without refrigeration for a remarkably long time, and they're loaded with natural sugars that hit your bloodstream fast. But unlike a candy bar you grab at a gas station off I-95 in Florida, dates come packaged with fiber, magnesium, potassium, copper, and B vitamins that slow down how quickly that sugar hits you and actually nourish your body while they're doing it. Researchers looked at how dates might support healthy iron levels, bone density, and even labor outcomes during pregnancy. Almonds are the second half of this pairing. In the book of Numbers, Aaron's staff miraculously buds with almond blossoms, and the almond becomes a symbol tied to watchfulness, chosen specifically because it's the very first tree to bloom each spring, sometimes as early as February in almond orchards up and down California's Central Valley, which still produces a vast majority of the world's almonds today. Nutritionally, almonds hold up their end of the deal. A single ounce provides a substantial portion of your daily vitamin E, an antioxidant that protects the membranes of your cells from damage. They're rich in magnesium, healthy fats, calcium, and fiber. Research has connected regular almond consumption with lower LDL cholesterol, smaller blood sugar spikes after meals, and a healthier balance of bacteria in the gut. Slice a date down the middle. Press in 3 or 4 raw almonds, and you got fast energy from the date balanced by slow, sustained fullness from the almond's protein and fat. People figured out how to balance carbohydrates, fat, and protein in a single bite long before anyone had a word for macronutrients. Number 3, pomegranate seeds with yogurt, the antioxidant crown. The pomegranate shows up on the pillars of Solomon's temple. It's stitched into the hem of the high priest's robe in the book of Exodus. It runs through the Song of Solomon as a symbol of beauty and life. 200 carved pomegranates decorated the columns of that temple, and that wasn't decoration for decoration's sake. That was a statement about what this fruit represented. Modern antioxidant research is still working to fully catch up with that statement. Pomegranates contain a compound that's found in very few other foods on Earth, and when it breaks down in your gut, it produces compounds that researchers have studied for their anti-inflammatory potential. Clinical research has looked at pomegranate juice's effects on blood pressure, LDL oxidation, and markers of inflammation in the blood. Gram for gram, the polyphenol concentration in pomegranate outranks red wine, green tea, and blueberries. Pair those ruby seeds with traditionally fermented goat or sheep's milk yogurt, the kind of living, cultured dairy that would have been completely standard on a table in the ancient Near East, and you've added a probiotic layer that populates your gut with exactly the kind of bacteria that thrive on the pomegranate's fiber. It's a prebiotic and probiotic combination that modern gut health researchers have spent decades formalizing into a science. Communities from ancient Israel to modern Armenia were eating it instinctively for generations. Scoop fresh pomegranate seeds over plain yogurt. Drizzle a little raw honey on top if you want it. And you got a snack that touches heart health, gut diversity, inflammation, and oxidative stress all at the same time. The people who carved 200 pomegranates into temple columns in ancient Jerusalem knew exactly what they were honoring. Number 4, olives with flatbread, the foundation of every table. Olive oil gets mentioned more than 140 times across Scripture. Kings were anointed with it. Wounds were dressed with it. In the story of the Good Samaritan, the first thing he does for the injured stranger on the road is pour oil into his wounds, because that was medicine at the time. And the olive itself, the actual fruit before it ever becomes oil, was everywhere in daily life, cured in brine, packed into clay jars, eaten at every table regardless of how much money you had. Extra virgin olive oil is one of the most heavily researched foods on the planet. Its primary active compound has anti-inflammatory properties that researchers have compared to over-the-counter pain relievers in terms of mechanism, though obviously nowhere near the same strength. The Mediterranean diet, which is built around olive oil as its foundation, has been linked in study after study to lower rates of heart disease, certain cancers, cognitive decline, and mortality overall. Whole olives eaten with the skin intact carry that same spectrum of protective compounds, plus vitamin E, copper, iron, and healthy monounsaturated fat. Pair that with a piece of whole grain flatbread, dense and hearty, the kind made from ancient grains like emmer or barley rather than bleached white flour, and you got fiber, complex carbohydrates, healthy fat, and antioxidants your body knows exactly what to do with. This wasn't a fancy meal for special occasions. This is what ordinary people ate every single day in the ancient Near East. And it turns out what ordinary people were eating every day has become one of the most protective dietary patterns modern researchers have ever documented. The same pattern people in blue zone communities from Sardinia to parts of the Mediterranean coast are still eating today. Sometimes the simplest combination really is the wisest one. Number 5, goat cheese with honey, the shepherd's restoration. The phrase a land flowing with milk and honey wasn't describing pasteurized, homogenized dairy sitting in a plastic jug in a supermarket cooler. It was describing fresh goat's milk, a genuinely different food than what fills most refrigerators today. Goat's milk has smaller fat globules and a different protein structure than conventional cow's milk, and many people who struggle to digest regular dairy find goat's milk considerably easier on their stomach. When that milk gets cultured and aged into simple cheese, the way shepherds across the biblical world have been doing for centuries, you concentrate its calcium, phosphorus, and particular medium-chain fatty acid called caprylic acid, which has been studied for antimicrobial and antifungal properties. Fresh goat cheese also carries beneficial bacteria from the culturing process itself, which makes it a living food rather than a sterile one. In the same tradition as the small batch cheesemakers you'll still find working out of barns in Vermont or the Texas Hill Country today. Drizzle raw honey over a slice of fresh goat cheese, and you've paired a probiotic-rich protein source with one of the most studied natural antimicrobials there is. The combination of caprylic acid from the cheese and the natural protective compounds in raw honey creates a snack that's actively working against the kind of bacteria and fungi that make you sick, while at the same time delivering calcium, healthy fat, and enzymes your body can put to immediate use. This is a shepherd snack. 2 ingredients. No equipment. No preparation beyond putting them on a plate together. And it provides more genuine nourishment than most things sitting in the supplement aisle of your local pharmacy. Number 6. Barley cakes with olive oil, the everyday grain. Barley was a grain of ordinary people. When Jesus multiplies the loaves and fish to feed a crowd of 5,000 in the Gospel of John, those loaves were barley bread. Barley was cheap and abundant, the food of soldiers, sailors, and laborers, not something fancy. And it turns out ordinary people were eating one of the most gut-friendly grains that's ever been studied. Barley has the highest concentration of soluble fiber called beta-glucan of any grain. That fiber has been studied so extensively for lowering cholesterol and stabilizing blood sugar that health regulators allow certain products containing it to carry official health claims. Beta-glucan forms a kind of gel in your gut that slows how quickly glucose gets absorbed, helps bring down LDL cholesterol, feeds beneficial bacteria, and supports immune function. Some research suggests barley may outperform oats, which already have a strong reputation as a heart-healthy food. When it comes to managing blood sugar after a meal, a simple barley cake or flatbread brush with cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil combines that cholesterol-lowering, blood sugar-stabilizing fiber with olive oil's anti-inflammatory compounds and heart-protective fats. This was the snack of people who didn't have much. And what they had turns out to be, gram for gram, more nutritionally powerful than a lot of what gets marketed as health food today at a premium price. Number 7. Grapes and walnuts. The longevity pairing. The vine is one of the most spiritually loaded plants in all of Scripture. I am the vine, you are the branches. Grapes appear right after Noah leaves the ark. They fill the pages of the Song of Solomon. They anchor almost every agricultural metaphor Jesus uses throughout the Gospels. And the reason grapes were so central to daily life wasn't just cultural. It's because this fruit contained something genuinely extraordinary. Fresh grapes eaten with their skins deliver resveratrol, quercetin, and anthocyanins, plant compounds that have become some of the most studied subjects in aging research over the last 2 decades. The skin and seeds carry the highest concentrations. A handful of whole fresh grapes, the same kind you might pick up at a farmer's market outside Napa or in the vineyard country of the Finger Lakes in New York, provides fiber, potassium, vitamin C, and vitamin K alongside those polyphenol. Walnuts round out the pairing. They're the richest source of plant-based omega-3 fatty acids of any nut. Research has consistently connected walnut consumption with improved cognitive function, reduced inflammatory markers, lower LDL cholesterol, and a healthier gut microbiome. Their polyphenol content gets converted by gut bacteria into compounds that researchers have studied for anti-inflammatory effects. Together, resveratrol supporting healthy aging pathways, omega-3s calming inflammation, and polyphenol fighting oxidative stress. This is a handful of food that touches aging heart health and brain protection all at once. The ancient world didn't know the exact mechanisms. They just knew the vine was sacred. The science is catching up to explain why they were right to treat it that way. Number 8. Dried figs and raisins, the wilderness survival snack. In the book of 1 Samuel, David's men come across an Egyptian soldier who'd been abandoned in the desert for 3 days without food or water. They revive him with a specific combination the text names directly, a piece of pressed fig cake and 2 clusters of raisins. His strength comes back. This wasn't random. It was precise traditional knowledge about which foods restore a depleted body fastest. Dried figs concentrate all the minerals and fiber of fresh figs into a shelf-stable, calorie-dense package. Potassium, calcium, magnesium, iron, and B vitamins, all present in quantities that make dried figs one of the most nutritionally dense portable foods a person can eat. The soluble fiber slows digestion, feeds gut bacteria, and moderates how quickly the natural sugar hits your bloodstream. Raisins bring rapid glucose for energy restoration, along with resveratrol, tartaric acid for digestive support, and iron that pairs well with that fiber. Together, these 2 foods provide exactly what a depleted body needs. Fast available sugar for immediate energy, sustained fiber for blood sugar stability, minerals for basic cellular function, and antioxidants to start addressing the oxidative stress that comes from physical exertion, whether that's crossing a desert 3,000 years ago or finishing a long shift on your feet at a warehouse outside Charlotte. This is the biblical version of a sports recovery snack. No refrigeration, no preparation, and it brought a man back from the edge of collapse. It's essentially the original trail mix, and it's got thousands of years of practical use behind it. Number 9. Lentil stew with flatbread, the birthright bowl. Esau trades his birthright to his brother Jacob for a bowl of red lentil stew in the book of Genesis. People have found that strange for centuries, until you understand what lentils actually were in that world. They weren't humble peasant food in the dismissive sense we might think of today. They were survival food, calorie-dense, protein-rich, and able to be stored dry for years, which made them worth far more than their modest appearance suggested. Lentils are one of the highest plant-based protein sources available, with somewhere around 18 grams per cooked cup, alongside iron, folate, zinc, magnesium, and potassium. They have a notably low glycemic index despite their carbohydrate content, which means they provide steady energy without the blood sugar spike you get from something more refined. Their fiber feeds gut bacteria and supports healthy cholesterol levels. And in population research on communities around the world with unusually high numbers of people living into their 90s and beyond, legumes like lentils show up as a consistent part of the diet again and again. A simple lentil dip, red lentils cooked down with cumin, coriander, and garlic, mashed smooth with a little olive oil, and spread onto barley or whole wheat flatbread, is one of the most nutritionally complete snacks you can make from a handful of simple ingredients. Protein and slow carbohydrate from the lentils, anti-inflammatory fat from the olive oil, and digestive support from the garlic and coriander. Esau was hungry in the moment, but the people who built their diet around lentils were building some of the most resilient bodies of the ancient world. It wasn't a bad food to trade for. He just made the trade at the wrong moment. Number 10. Cucumbers with salt and vinegar. The Egyptian memory. When the Israelites are wandering through the wilderness eating nothing but manna day after day, they finally break down, and the book of Numbers gives us their exact complaint. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt for free, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. They weren't longing for gold or comfort in some abstract sense. They specifically missed cucumbers. That tells you something about how central this food was to daily life, and how deeply the body registers what it's missing. Cucumbers are about 96% water, which makes them one of the most hydrating foods that exists, but they also contain plant compounds that researchers have studied for anti-inflammatory and antioxidant effects, along with silica that supports connective tissue, vitamin K for bone and blood health, and potassium and magnesium for electrolyte balance. Sliced and dressed with a pinch of sea salt and a splash of vinegar, the way cucumbers were traditionally prepared across Egyptian and Middle Eastern food culture, you add two important layers. Sea salt provides trace minerals and helps your body actually absorb what's in the cucumber. Vinegar, especially raw apple cider vinegar with the mother still intact, has been studied for its effects on insulin sensitivity and blood sugar response after meals. This might be the single most underrated snack on this entire list. 3 ingredients, 0 real preparation beyond slicing. An entire nation of people cried out for it in the middle of the desert. Once you understand the full picture why, it's hard to take a simple sliced cucumber for granted again. Number 11. Roasted chickpeas with cumin, the tithe-worthy spice. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus criticizes religious leaders for meticulously tithing even their garden herbs, mint, dill, and cumin, while neglecting justice and mercy. The fact that cumin was valuable enough to be tithed tells you something important. You don't tithe things that don't matter. Cumin has been used medicinally for roughly 4,000 years across the Middle East, India, and North Africa, for digestion, blood sugar management, and fighting infection. Modern research has actually confirmed a lot of that traditional use. Its active compound has shown antimicrobial effects against a range of bacteria and fungi in laboratory studies. Research has connected cumin with lower fasting blood sugar and improved insulin sensitivity in people with type 2 diabetes. It stimulates bile production and digestive enzyme activity, which can reduce bloating and improve how well your body absorbs nutrients. A modest serving of cumin provides a meaningful chunk of your daily iron needs. Chickpeas roasted with cumin and sea salt give you a crunchy, portable snack with real plant protein, prebiotic fiber that feeds beneficial gut bacteria, iron, folate, and manganese, combined with cumin's blood sugar support and antimicrobial properties. This was daily food across the ancient biblical world. The kind of thing you find at a market stall, the way you find a food truck today in Austin or a roadside stand in rural North Carolina. Jesus mentioned cumin specifically because everyone listening grew it, cooked with it, and paid taxes on it. It mattered that much. And roasted chickpeas were a vehicle that carried it into people's daily diet. Number 12. Honeycomb, the living antimicrobial. Here's the one I mentioned at the very beginning. In 1 Samuel, Jonathan dips his staff into honeycomb, and the text says his eyes brightened. Proverbs describes pleasant words as being like a honeycomb, sweet to the taste and healing to the body. And after the resurrection, when Jesus appears to his disciples and they want proof he's physically present and not a ghost, he asks for food, and they hand him a piece of broiled fish and a piece of honeycomb. Of everything available to offer him, that's what gets mentioned. That's not an accident of storytelling. Honeycomb was one of the most medically respected foods in the ancient world. And here's what makes honeycomb genuinely different from even raw liquid honey. It's the whole product. The wax cells are still intact. Propolis is still present. Pollen is still present. The wax itself contains compounds that have been studied for anti-inflammatory properties. Propolis, the resin bees use to seal and protect the hive, is one of the most researched natural antimicrobials there is, with documented activity in studies against bacteria, certain viruses, and fungi, including some antibiotic-resistant strains. Research on raw honey and honeycomb has looked at activity against difficult bacteria, certain fungal infections, and other pathogens. The hydrogen peroxide generation, the natural low pH, the defensive proteins, the propolis compounds. When you eat them together in whole honeycomb, all of those mechanisms are present at the same time, working in combination. Chew a piece of raw honeycomb. The wax itself is perfectly safe to eat. The propolis and pollen carry real medicinal value. The honey is doing its antimicrobial work the entire time. This might be the most concentrated healing snack on this entire list, packed into the most compact form nature has ever produced. The ancient world treated it as something close to sacred. The biochemistry backs that reverence up. Number 13. Pistachios and dates. The patriarch's luxury pack. When Jacob sends his sons down to Egypt to negotiate for grain during a famine in the book of Genesis, he tells them to bring gifts for the Egyptian official they're meeting with. Pistachios make that list, right alongside honey, spices, myrrh, and almonds. If Jacob thought pistachios were an appropriate gift to bring before Egyptian royalty, that tells you exactly how valuable they were considered. These weren't a casual snack. They were treasure. Pistachios are unusually high in lutein and zeaxanthin, plant pigments that have been studied specifically for eye health and protection against age-related vision decline. They contain more potassium than most other nuts, which supports healthy blood pressure. They have a surprisingly complete amino acid profile for plant food, and research has shown that regular pistachio consumption meaningfully increases beneficial gut bacteria, more so than several other nuts that have been tested in comparison. Paired with dates, the fast energy, mineral-rich survival fruit we already talked about, you get quick glucose for energy, slower fat, and protein from the pistachios, and a combined fiber matrix that helps moderate blood sugar while feeding your gut microbiome at the same time. Clinical research on pistachios specifically has shown improvements in lipid profiles, blood sugar control, and inflammatory markers. Their unique cell wall structure also means your body doesn't absorb quite as many calories from them as the label suggests, so you get more satisfaction per calorie than you'd expect. Jacob understood value. He sent pistachios to try to impress the most powerful nation on earth at the time. Eat a handful with 3 or 4 dates, and you're eating what a patriarch thought was worth trading for his family's survival. Number 14. Pomegranate molasses on bread. The red medicine. The pomegranate's usefulness doesn't stop at the seeds. Traditional cultures across the Middle East, the same cultures that produced the biblical texts, used every part of this fruit. The rind was brewed into tea for intestinal issues. The juice was reduced and concentrated down into a dark, intensely flavored syrup known as pomegranate molasses, used as both food and medicine across Lebanon, Syria, and the broader Levant for centuries, and it's still a pantry staple in Middle Eastern households today, the same way you'd find hot sauce sitting on a kitchen counter in Louisiana. When you concentrate pomegranate juice down into molasses, the polyphenol content increases dramatically per spoonful. The same protective compounds we talk about with the fresh seeds, now in a form your gut can absorb even more efficiently. Laboratory research on pomegranate extracts has explored potential effects against certain cancer cell lines, and clinical trials have looked at reductions in systolic blood pressure, LDL oxidation, and markers of arterial plaque progression. Spread pomegranate molasses on a piece of whole grain flatbread. The bread provides fiber and complex carbohydrates. The molasses delivers one of the highest antioxidant concentrations you'll find in any food product, period. A thin layer contained a level of polyphenol that rivals what you'd find in a bottle of supplements from a health food store. This was simply a condiment in the ancient world, sitting on tables the way ketchup sits on tables today. What was ordinary food back then is extraordinary medicine by today's standards, and most people walking around have never even heard of it. Number 15. Fresh grapes with cheese. The vine and the pasture. This might be the simplest snack on the entire list, and it's also one of the most nutritionally elegant. Fresh whole grapes. Skin on. Seeds included if you don't mind them, eaten alongside a simple aged cheese made from goat or sheep's milk. This is what a shepherd's midday break looked like in the hill country of ancient Israel. And it turns out the nutritional logic behind this pairing is almost exactly what a sports dietitian would design today. Grapes provide fast carbohydrate for energy, resveratrol and quercetin for cardiovascular support, potassium for blood pressure regulation, and antioxidants that help offset the oxidative stress that comes from physical activity. Cheese brings protein and fat that slow down how quickly your stomach empties, which prevents the blood sugar spike the grapes might otherwise cause on their own. The calcium in aged cheese, the caprylic acid from goat milk fat, and the live cultures in naturally aged cheese add antimicrobial and gut-supportive benefits on top of everything else. Together you get fast energy balanced by protein and fat, antioxidants for cellular protection, and minerals for sustained function throughout the day. The vine and the pasture, two of the most central agricultural images in the entire Bible, combine into one snack that balances macronutrients almost intuitively. People in the biblical world ate this because it's what they had available. We should be eating it today because we finally understand exactly why it worked so well. Number 16. Roasted almonds with sea salt. The watchful nut. God instructs Moses to design the lampstand of the tabernacle, the menorah, with cups shaped like almond blossoms. Aaron's staff miraculously buds with almonds. The almond became a symbol of divine watchfulness specifically because it's the first tree to wake up each spring, blooming before anything else around it. Sacred architecture was built around the shape of this nut's flower, and the nut hiding inside that flower is one of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. A single ounce of almonds delivers a substantial share of your daily vitamin E, a fat-soluble antioxidant that protects your cell membranes from damage. They provide monounsaturated fats your heart uses efficiently, magnesium that supports hundreds of enzymatic reactions in your body, and that a large share of people today are actually deficient in, and fiber that feeds gut bacteria rather than getting stored as fat. Clinical research has shown almonds can lower LDL cholesterol, reduce blood sugar spikes after meals, and support a healthy body weight by increasing satiety. Lightly roasted with a pinch of sea salt. The way nuts would have been prepared over an open fire in the ancient world. The gentle heat increases the availability of certain antioxidants, while the sea salt provides trace minerals, including magnesium, potassium, and iodine in a natural form. This is a 10-second preparation that produces a snack the biblical world built sacred architecture around honoring. Grab a small handful. That's about as close as you can get to what the ancient world would have called breakfast. Number 17. Fig cakes. The prophet's prescription. We're coming back to figs here because a pressed fig cake earns its own spot on this list. Not the fresh fruit, not even a whole dried fig, but the cake. Dried figs pressed together into a dense, shelf-stable block that can be carried for weeks and used both as food and as medicine. This is a specific preparation Isaiah calls for when King Hezekiah is dying the book of 2 Kings. A lump of figs, a pressed fig cake, placed directly on the affected area, and the king recovers. When you press dried figs together into a cake, you concentrate their natural enzymes, their antimicrobial compounds, their polyphenol, and their mineral density all into one small package. Dried fig cakes carry iron, calcium, potassium, and magnesium in concentrations that rival a lot of modern supplements. The pectin fiber in that concentrated form feeds gut bacteria more effectively per gram than almost any other fruit fiber out there. Eaten as a snack, a small piece of fig cake provides sustained energy from natural sugars that are buffered by extremely high fiber content, which means the glucose releases slowly and steadily instead of spiking all at once. It delivers minerals for basic bodily function. It delivers compounds that support gut health and was portable enough to sustain armies on campaign, prophets wander in the desert, and traders on month-long journeys along ancient trade routes. Isaiah knew exactly what he was prescribing. The exact mechanism just had to wait 3,000 years for science to catch up and explain it. Number 18. Bread dipped in olive oil and herbs. The ancient table. In the book of Ruth, Boaz tells Ruth to come and eat some bread and dip her piece in the vinegar. That was standard practice at the ancient table. Bread is a vehicle for everything else, oil, herbs, salt, vinegar, because the bread itself wasn't really the point. Bread was a delivery system. What you dipped it in was the medicine. Whole grain flatbread dipped in cold-pressed extra virgin olive oil with fresh or dried herbs, hyssop, oregano, thyme, rosemary, is one of the most anti-inflammatory snacks you could possibly assemble with 3 or 4 ingredients. Olive oil provides that natural compound with anti-inflammatory properties we talked about earlier. Hyssop contains compounds found in some pharmaceutical-grade antiseptics. Oregano oil is one of the most researched natural antimicrobials there is. Rosemary contains rosmarinic acid, which has documented antioxidant and anti-inflammatory effects. The herbs of the biblical world weren't garnish, sitting decoratively on the side of a plate. They were medicine delivered through food. The ritual of dipping bread in oil was completely functional. It was how people got antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory, and antioxidant compounds into their bodies with every single meal, every single day, without ever framing it to themselves as medicine at all. The ancient world's relationship between food and medicine wasn't separated the way ours often is. This snack is the clearest expression of that unified understanding, and it's a habit you could pick back up tonight with whatever's sitting in your pantry. Number 19. Melon slices with mint. The remembered food. Melons show up in that same complaint from the book of Numbers. Right alongside the cucumbers and garlic, the Israelites mourned in the wilderness. They missed melons badly enough to weep over them. After weeks of nothing but manna, their bodies were sending clear signals about what was missing from their diet, and melon was on that list. Watermelon and muskmelon. The varieties most closely associated with ancient Egyptian and Near Eastern cultivation are remarkably hydrating and rich in compounds that modern researchers find genuinely interesting. Watermelon contains lycopene in concentrations that actually exceed cooked tomatoes, and lycopene has been studied extensively for cardiovascular and prostate health. Watermelon also contains citrulline, an amino acid your body converts into another compound that helps relax blood vessels and support circulation, which is part of why you'll see watermelon extract marketed to athletes from college training rooms in Florida to gyms across the country. Muskmelon varieties are rich in beta-carotene, vitamin C, folate, and potassium. Fresh mint, a common wild herb throughout the ancient Near East and one of the herbs Jesus specifically names alongside cumin and dill, adds rosmarinic acid for antioxidant support, menthol for digestive comfort and a cooling sensation, and volatile compounds that have shown antimicrobial properties in research. Melon slices with fresh mint is cooling, hydrating, anti-inflammatory, and genuinely nutrient-dense. The Israelites mourned the loss of it because their bodies knew exactly what they were missing. Your body still knows too, even if you've never put words to it. Number 20. Raisin cakes with honey and spices. The feast food that healed. We're ending where the ancient feast ended, with raisin cakes. These show up repeatedly in ancient Near Eastern food tradition as both a celebratory food and a restorative one. They were dense, sweet, concentrated, and treated as something special, saved for feast days, offered as gifts, given to people who needed their strength restored. Raisins are concentrated grapes, and in that concentration, their resveratrol, tartaric acid, iron, potassium, and polyphenol become dramatically more dense per gram than you get from a fresh fruit. Tartaric acid specifically supports digestive health by feeding gut bacteria and improving mineral absorption. The natural sugars provide fast energy, and the iron content has historically made raisin cakes useful for addressing fatigue and low iron, particularly in women. Press raisins into a dense cake with raw honey, cinnamon, and cardamom, the spices that flavored festive food throughout the ancient biblical world. And you layer in even more benefits. Honey's antimicrobial protection and natural enzymes. Cinnamon's documented ability to support insulin sensitivity and help manage fasting blood sugar, and cardamom's anti-inflammatory compounds and digestive support. Clinical research on cinnamon, in particular, has shown meaningful improvements in blood sugar control for people managing type 2 diabetes. This is the feast snack that doubled as medicine, rich enough to feel like a genuine celebration, functional enough to restore a depleted body, and preserve enough to travel and keep for weeks. It closed out the feast because it represented the culmination, the densest concentration of everything the land had produced that season, pressed together, sweetened with honey, and spiced for both flavor and healing at the same time. One more thing worth sitting with before we wrap up. Notice how few ingredients show up across all 20 of these snacks. Figs, dates, honey, olives, grapes, almonds, barley, lentils, a handful of herbs. That's essentially it. There's no 40-ingredient label here. There's no artificial dye, no preservative you can't pronounce, no factory involved at any point in the process. Every one of these snacks could be assembled by hand, outdoors, using tools that existed thousands of years before electricity. And yet, gram for gram, gathered together, they cover an enormous range of what your body actually needs on a daily basis. Protein from lentils and cheese, healthy fat from olives, almonds, and pistachios, fast and slow-burning carbohydrates from dates, figs, and barley, minerals from sea salt and goat's milk, antioxidants stacked on top of antioxidants from grapes, pomegranate, and honeycomb, probiotics from fermented yogurt and cheese, prebiotic fiber from chickpeas and lentils that feeds those same probiotics once they arrive. It's a complete system, and it was built by trial and error over countless generations, refined by people who didn't have the luxury of getting it wrong very often. If a food didn't actually work, it didn't survive as a tradition. That's a kind of testing modern food science can't fully replicate in a lab, because it played out across centuries of real human bodies in real conditions, from the hill country of ancient Judea to the trade routes running through what's now Iraq and Egypt. And there's something else worth noticing. Almost none of these snacks exist in isolation. They're pairs, figs and honey, dates and almonds, grapes and cheese. Pistachios and dates again. Bread and oil. This wasn't random. Ancient people, without any concept of macronutrients or glycemic index, kept landing on the same basic principle modern dietitians spend years in school learning to apply. Pair a fast source of energy with something that slows it down. Pair a source of fat with a source of fiber. Pair something sweet with something that blunts the sugar spike. They didn't have the vocabulary, but they had the pattern, tested and repeated across thousands of meals, thousands of feasts, thousands of ordinary afternoons where someone reached for a snack between chores. That instinct got baked into tradition, then baked into scripture, and it's sitting there today waiting for anyone willing to look past the assumption that ancient equals primitive. I'd also point out that this isn't really about being religious or not. You don't have to interpret any of these stories a particular way to notice that the food choices described across these texts line up remarkably well with what nutrition research keeps finding decades and centuries later. Whether you read these passages as scripture, as history, or simply as some of the oldest surviving records of how people actually ate and lived, the pattern holds. People who paid close attention to their environment, who couldn't afford to waste food or guess wrong about what kept them healthy, arrived at combinations that still hold up under a microscope today. That's worth taking seriously regardless of where you're coming from. 20 snacks, thousands of years of use behind every single one of them, and every one backed by modern research that keeps circling back to conclusions the ancient world had already built its entire diet around. Here's what I really want you to walk away with. The people eating these foods weren't primitive. They were paying attention. They noticed what sustained them through long days of physical labor, what helped them recover when they were sick, what gave them steady energy and clear thinking. And they passed that knowledge down through their cooking, through their feasts, through their sacred traditions, and yes, through their scriptures. And now modern nutrition science, with its clinical trials and its ability to look at what's happening inside a cell, keeps arriving at very similar conclusions, not always for the exact reasons the ancient world would have given, but landing in the same place. Figs support wound healing. Honey has genuine antimicrobial properties. Pomegranate supports heart health. Cumin helps regulate blood sugar. Honeycomb carries compounds researchers are still working to fully map out. This wasn't a list of miracle cures. It was a description of a way of eating that was so aligned with human biology that thousands of years of accumulated tradition ends up looking remarkably close to what current nutrition research actually recommends. The foods that got pushed aside by the modern snack aisle are often the ones most worth bringing back. One last practical note, because I know some of you are already thinking about how to actually do this instead of just watching. You don't need to overhaul your entire pantry overnight. Start with one pairing. Keep a container of raw honey and a bag of dried figs on the counter instead of buried in the back of the cabinet. And reach for that instead of whatever's in the vending machine at work. Swap the flavored yogurt cups loaded with added sugar for plain full-fat yogurt and top it yourself with real fruit. Buy whole almonds instead of flavored, oil-roasted kind packed with seed oils and preservatives, and roast them yourself in a dry pan with a little sea salt in about 5 minutes. None of this requires a farm, a homestead, or a plane ticket to the Middle East. Most of these ingredients are sitting in the international aisle or the bulk bins of a regular grocery store. Whether you're shopping in a co-op in Portland, a Trader Joe's outside Boston, or an H-E-B in San Antonio, the barrier was never access. It was awareness. And now you have it. Before you go, a couple of things. If any of these 20 snacks surprise you, I want to know which one. Drop a comment and tell me if you're Team Honeycomb, Team Fig Cake, or Team Dates and Pistachios. I read through the comments on every video, and I genuinely want to know what landed for you. And if you're the kind of person who wants to actually build a kitchen around foods like this, real fermented dairy, real raw honey, ancient grains instead of the bleach stuff, that's exactly what this channel is about. Hit subscribe on Healthy Roots and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one. Because we're just getting started and there's a lot more ancient wisdom worth digging back up. Thanks for spending this time with me. I'll see you in the next one.